Let's bring in Sky News contributor Gary Hardgrave and Associate Editor at The Australian, Graham Lloyd. Graham, starting with you, what do you make of Tanya Plibersek's comments and Chris Bowen's move here?
Well, it's an extraordinary thing, Sharri, and it's really an illustration of where politics gets in the way of common sense and good policy. What we're talking about here is an agreement at the cutting edge of nuclear research to develop these small reactors, and it's something that Australia has been involved in for the best part of the last decade. We have a very sophisticated nuclear apparatus here out at Lucas Heights and Ansto. They've been feeding into these programs. That program is being updated, and rather than admit that Australia has something to do with developing these nuclear plants that may be deployed elsewhere in the world, Chris Bowen's pulled us out. And really it's short-sighted, both diplomatically and certainly from a scientific and research point of view.
And also, you know, in terms of getting to a net zero position, which the government says it wants to do, Gary, isn't Australia now increasingly out of step with our counterparts, international countries, like-minded nations?
Sharri, I got to say, I think the average Australian has got it worked out. They know this bloke Bowen is an idiot. They know Tanya Plibersek is also a sovereign risk, and they're blaming the Prime Minister. We are completely out of step with all forms of common sense. The price of electricity is just going to continue to rise the longer we say no to having nuclear as part of the mix. It's as simple as that. Wind and sunshine is not going to cut it, not going to produce the base load we need. We're just going to end up with diesel generators, very, very expensive diesel generators filling up the gap like we saw in South Australia. What was that, 2016? This is an experiment. The only country in the world that is committed to going as full-on renewable as Australia is Australia. We are idiots. Well, Australians aren't idiots. The government are idiots. And the sovereign risk is real. We're not going to be able to have a future made in Australia if we haven't got any electricity. This is like selling the sizzle without being able to cook the sausage. This is ridiculous what they're doing to us. Really ridiculous.
One of Labor's main arguments against nuclear is the expense, is how much it's going to cost. But one leading energy expert told my colleague Chris Kenny last night that the transition to renewable energy under Labor's plan could cost $600 billion. Have a quick look.
If it was being done on time and at the scale that was necessary, it would be that. I suspect we're going to need a little bit more than that as we look to firm up even beyond that. The thesis, the AEMO thesis, has been that solar and renewables and hydro with batteries could get us there, but I think we're all admitting now that we're probably going to struggle in the 2030 period.
Graham Lloyd, do those, estimations of cost, $600 billion from Matt Rennie, sound about right to you?
Well, certainly that is the findings of some research by Frontier Economics, and they've looked at the whole system cost of trying to achieve what the government is saying. Now, in the past, the government's only really admitted to a small part or fraction of what's involved. And now when you put it all together with the transmission lines and firming and other things, the numbers that are coming out are astronomically high. And as the interview showed there, this is a conservative estimate. That's if everything goes right. And what we know is that everything certainly will not go right.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary cost, isn't it, Gary? And we don't know the full extent of it. There's no transparency here.
Well, there's no transparency for sure, but it's actually $1,400 billion, so $1.4 trillion involved in the duplication of the transmission lines and then down to the poles and wire. I mean, we saw what Chris Hillman put to air on Sky just the other night. That is a compelling documentary that should be seen by any thinking Australian. Any grandparent or parent who hasn't shown it to their children should cue the kids up to see it. This is the inconvenient reality that Chris Bowen doesn't want you to look at. So I'm actually saying to you it's more like $2 trillion. Isn't it interesting? that the future fund is now going to be tapped for infrastructure. What they mean is poles and wires. So the 230 billion sitting in that's going to go off to this sort of stuff. I think we are in a fearful problem right now, and Australians, all thinking Australians, should rightly get angry at this government. They are hell-bent on dragging this country back to pre-colonial times. We will not have the kind of industrialised future that we need based on where they're taking us, because we won't be able to make anything in Australia. We'll be reliant on everybody overseas, and even agriculture is going to suffer as a result, Sharri. It's just devastating when you think about it.
Look, just very quickly, just 30 seconds, Graham Lloyd, before we go. We're seeing another union, the United Workers Union, threatening to strike 1,500 employees. I mean, if work stops at the 4 distribution centres in Victoria and New South Wales, supermarket and liquor store shelves, we're being told, could be bare this Christmas.
Well, it's really harking back to the past, isn't it, or back to the future, where we have strikes and pay rise demands and things that really haven't been a big feature over recent years. From reading reports here, workers were concerned that they are going to be monitored too much on the workplace, but what they should be concerned about is being replaced by robots.
Well, yeah, that is a problem as AI develops. All right, Gary Hardgrave, Graham Lloyd, thank you both very much for your time.
Thanks.